Welcome to the Thursday Checkdown with Joe and Rick. At the Sports Affiliation, it is our goal to have fun talking to many great people in the fantasy industry. Tonight, we have Editor-in-Chief of Fantasy Advice Network and host of Bridge the Gap podcast, Mr. Dustin Ludke. What's up, Dustin? How are you?
Hey, guys. How's it going? It's a great day. We got a week until the NFL draft. It's good to get on. I appreciate you guys having me on. Let's talk some football.
Awesome. Rick, how you doing tonight, brother?
Doing great. And like Dustin said, just so excited about next week's draft. Really looking forward to it, finding out where these people are going to land.
I can't wait to see what the Patriots do it for. As a fan, I want them to trade back. I think that they have so many areas to address that this is, and unless Travis Hunter or Abdul Kader are sitting there, but I don't think they are. I think the top three picks are chalk, and they might be best. If they do pick, I hope they go offensive lineman. I will say that.
Yeah, but that seems to be that's the general consensus is they'll go offensive lineman there.
What's going on, Antonio? Appreciate everybody joining in the chat. All right, so let's get into learning a little bit more about Dustin, the fantasy football player, before we talk rookies. So Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from? If you have any, you can mention family if you want. What you do outside of fantasy football, hobbies, all that stuff.
Yeah, I currently live in Madison, Wisconsin, but I'm an East Coast guy from New Jersey, outside Philadelphia area. As you can tell, my background, I'm a Bills fan. My mom's family's all from Buffalo, so grew up a Bills fan my whole life. Still a Bills fan. Things have turned around the past few years. So that's been good. It's been a long stretch of not being so great, but we stuck through it. Wife and kid, work at the University of Wisconsin as my full-time job, and then just do this football stuff on the side has been a huge passion of mine for past 4 years or so, and just kind of grind away, do a lot of stuff on the side. One of my big personal tenets is just helping people, and helping people with whatever it is. So if people need help with football in their podcast, people reach out. I got people that call me if they need help with their fantasy team, or if they need help, moving furniture. Like, that's my goal, is to just help people in whatever way I shape and form I can. So it's a big part of who I am, is just helping people. I am a huge extrovert, which I think most of the industry is introverts. I'm a big extrovert, so I love people, love talking to people, so I love hopping on shows like this and getting to talk to people about my life and football and anything in between.
I agree. I love meeting new people. That's one of my favorite things about this show. Yeah. I get to learn everybody's Twitter handle a little bit better. It's definitely a cool experience. When did you start playing fantasy football, and how long have you been at this? You could tell us about your first league even. I want to hear about your first couple picks and how you did.
It's a family league, so probably been in it for 20 some years. My family, my uncle started it. Was my uncle, my mom. What's up, everyone? They started it, got us into it. So it's, cousins, aunts, uncles, brother, sister, now it's nieces and nephews are getting in. It's been going about 25 years. We have a trophy. You're supposed to get it when you win. No one ever seems to get it. My uncle seems to just keep it on his mantle. He still gets our names engraved on it. So it's been one of those things. And then I just slowly evolved from there, playing with friends from college. Got into a keeper league, eventually got into dynasty leagues. And now, I have a couple dynasty leagues. And obviously I do the big, tournaments, Scott Fish Bowls, Warrior Bowls, those sort of things. I do keep my leagues pretty low. Generally, I'm in like 3 or 4 leagues every year. Between work and, doing a podcast myself and writing and all the stuff behind the scenes, I just don't have a ton of time to do a ton of management. I used to be in like 7 and just became too much. So I just generally keep it pretty low. League count, I don't really do best ball that much. It's just, I'd much rather manage leagues. I enjoy trading. My favorite year I've ever had was a year where I knew I wasn't going to be good, and it was a keeper league, and we could trade draft picks, and I just literally traded the whole year. And I think I made 10, 15 trades. I walked out of that year, and then the next year I had 6 picks in the first 2 rounds. And I had so many picks that the league decided to basically fold and restart because they just basically conceded that I was going to win the next year. So I was like, all right, that's basically a championship for me. So I enjoy that. Like, I just want to have fun. And if trading's fun, that was a fun year for me. I had so much fun just wheeling and dealing. So that's why I don't like best ball. I want to be able to wheel and deal and make connections.
And you did a pretty good job talking about the leagues you're in and the types of leagues. But yeah, you didn't mention whether or not you do any IDP leagues or any contract leagues.
I don't do any contract or IDPs. My friends Joe and Steve over at Front Office Pros have been nagging me to get in a contract league and IDP. Part of it is
too detailed, right? Way too much detail.
I think it sounds great. My problem is that I like to do deep dive. So I'm always looking for like that diamond in the rough. And it's just too many players. There's just so much for me to get lost in that it would consume so much time. If that was it would be my only league. And I would just spend so much time like finding like the matchups. I played fantasy hockey years ago. And I was always on there just grinding away because his name's like, oh, I need more block shots. So who's the best block shot guy? Get him in. There's just too many guys for me at some point, especially with IDP. So it's like, it's just, I know I would get too into it and it would suck up so much more of my time that I just stay away from it. I think it sounds fun. And I love that, especially contracts, like being able to wheel and deal. I think there's some nuances that are missing from it just because it's, you're not actually dealing with a contract with another person. But it's just too much. I would get too into it that it would suck up so much of my time that I just can't even dabble.
Yeah, and I want to go along with Jerry. IDP is a lot of fun. It gives you a chance to look at the other side of the ball and gives you a chance to, start doing drafts that are, where you're able to get, offensive players a little later in the draft because some of the people are up there trying to grab at the top defensive players. So
yeah, I'm all for it. I've always been, I don't want to say a hater of red zone, but I have never liked red zone because I want to watch the game because I love a defensive stand. I love a good sack. I love a good interception. I love those things. I think they're fun leagues. It's just, I know I would get too obsessed with it that I can't do it.
The IDP, so Rick and these guys are trying. I haven't done it yet. I haven't dipped my feet yet either. Iggy runs, I guess Iggy's big into it. So my deal for Iggy, if you're listening, I want to get you on a podcast at some point. I don't care if it's this show, Drafters After Dark, Mock Draft Mondays, whatever. You and I haven't been on air together. When you and I are officially on air together, I'll join an IDP league. That's the deal. I'm going to put it out there on air right now. And,
Heavy is a whole nother ball of wax. Where again, it's just there's too much. It's just too many players for me to like. I just know the personality I have that I would just get so into the weeds that it would be all consuming for me.
There's only so much brain power to go around. I mean,
there's only so much time, right? And then that just takes away time from family, from the other things I enjoy doing, from helping other people. It just becomes too much.
Totally agree. All right, so let's see. When did you decide to get involved in the fantasy industry, helping people win their fantasy leagues?
Yeah, it was about...
Obviously, it's a passion, but...
Yeah, it was about 4, maybe 5 years ago. I'd written stuff on the side. I did a couple other blogs, maybe 5-10 years ago. And then my buddy Rich reached out to me. We were in a league together. He said, hey, I write for Pitcher List and QB List. So QB List is the football side, Pitcher List is the baseball side. And I knew he wrote there, and I read some of his stuff. And he said, hey, they're looking for baseball writers. Like, I'm taking a step back. I'm just going to do baseball this year. They're looking for football writers. I think you'd be really good at it. I've seen some of your stuff. I think you'd good. So he set up an introduction with their editors, submitted a sample. I'd done a few things here and there. There's a website called Poll Sports, which basically is just a site where you can just post polls, like, who do you like in this trade? And there was a guy who was running it. I became friends with them. He let me post a couple things on their blog, just like some ideas. And so I got on with QB List and just started writing, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I got on Twitter and was like, oh, there's this whole community on Twitter, and it just became this whole, like, let's interact with people, and realized, like, obviously helping people is something I'm really passionate about, but I do enjoy writing. I love writing. So I just got into it and just started writing away and just became like this avalanche of like, oh, I can write this. And then I got involved in podcasting, and then I got involved in behind the scenes stuff. And now I do media credentials. So I'll be at the draft next week with media credentials. It'll be my third one, done the combine. Would love someday to do like Senior Bowl and Super Bowl, those things. Just, cost effective and time away from family is not super conducive for all those trips right now. But I love going to that. Part of my mantra is not only helping people, but also my podcast is called Bridge the Gap. And part of that was there's fantasy football and there's real football, and there's that crossover between the two that sometimes gets missed. So that's why I love going to the draft. I love going to the draft and combine to kind of get the real football, doing some of the things behind the scenes, reported on some of the stuff you just don't hear about, like all the cool stuff the NFL does, around the draft that people don't know about, the charity stuff they do, all these different events really is something I'm really passionate about reporting on. So my clause is something that, I love the NFL does that, player charities, when we saw Damar Hamlin go down and almost die on the field, everyone's like, oh, let's support his charity. I go, yeah, that's great. Why aren't we supporting their charities all the time? Like, why aren't we talking about player charities every week, right? Why is it just when they do something, either something really bad happens to them, or, Bills fans were supporting Andy Dalton when he got them into the playoff by beating another team. That's great, but let's talk about these things more often, because NFL Man of the Year, all these things, that's something. They're people, but players are people, not just players. Like, they have outside lives, they have other interests. I want to talk about that stuff too.
Yeah, a lot of stuff goes behind the scenes for sure.
A lot of stuff does.
All right, let's see. You want to tell us a little bit about the Fantasy Advice Network? And
yeah,
I mean, you already got into your Bridge the Gap podcast a little bit. Tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, Fantasy Advice Network is 2 parts. There's a content site, which I help run as editor-in-chief, where we write articles. We do football and baseball, a little bit of basketball. We're, slowly building that, typical articles where we want to give you actionable advice. And then there's the social platform, which is fantasysportsadvice.network, which is actually like a social media platform where you can go on and it's just sports. So it's a place where you can go, much like a Twitter, much like a Blue Sky, but it's just sports. You're not going to see ads. You're not going to see political stuff. It's just sports. So signed on with them this year just to kind of help them, tighten up the content side. They're doing some great things. They're building out some really cool apps, some tools. Really a place where you can it's all about sports and not just football. We do baseball, we do basketball. We're looking to add soccer and hockey and other things down the road. But really want to make sure we're providing, one thing I tell my writers is that we are the fantasy advice network. So it needs to be fantasy relevant, also needs advice. We're not the sports information network. We're not here just to go, hey, this guy got injured.
Not sports, yeah.
We want to go, hey, this guy got injured, and this is who it
This
impacts.
is what I love that.
Negative,
right?
I love that. I want to make sure everything is actionable. So just trying to build out a team there. We have a great team to start off. We got a great, owner in Tyler. We've got a great, system set up, and we're just expanding. They're doing a lot of stuff with Scott Fishbowl this year. They're doing a live NFL draft thing in Tennessee. So if you're in the Tennessee, Nashville area, go let me know. We can hook you up with that. So we're just doing that. And then my podcast, Bridge the Gap, just switched. So I just made an announcement last week on the show. It used to be kind of football related. It's no longer football related. Now it's just going to be conversations about topics. I previously done ones on music. I've done ones on counseling. I've done one on, like core memories and being a dad. And fans really like that. So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of talk of just a certain topic. So I might have someone on who's going to talk about dealing with regret. I might have someone on who's going to talk about the Civil War. I might have someone who comes on and talks about coaching and mentoring. I might have someone come on and talk about, what it takes to start a podcast. I might have someone on who's going to come on and talk about, anything you can think of. I might get someone on to talk about. So it's just going to be a fun conversation, not really football podcast, but I enjoy having those conversations. A conversation between me, whoever my guest is, and the live chat on Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. Just kind of way have this conversation about a topic and let you guys ask your questions and have this person kind of answer it and kind of have this live conversation about one topic each night and kind of go from there and kind of give you kind of the basics overview of that topic and hopefully answer some questions. And you walk away and you've learned something and maybe you're a little more curious about something down the road. So that's kind of the podcast.
I love that. I was going to say, I love that because for every specific topic, there is somebody that can give you advice.
Yeah.
So this is I like that angle.
Yeah, and you might learn. You'll see some faces, So obviously, I know a lot of people in the football space. Get some of them on, but you might see someone come on and they won't talk about that. You might see someone like Andrew Cooper come on. And he might talk about like what I don't know if people know this, but he really loves to like refurbish shoes. Like he buys leather shoes. And,
yep.
Talk about that. I might get someone
talk about guy stuff, right?
Yeah. I might get like someone like, let's say I get Mike Wright from the Fantasy Footballers, and we might talk about producing music because that's something he's also passionate about. Maybe I get Jason Moore from the Footballers, and we talk about cooking because that's something he's passionate about and he has a lot of knowledge about. So there's all this sort of things where I think you'll see some familiar faces, but there won't be football talk. It'll be just learning something. And I think people, if you're a curious person, you're going to go in and go, maybe I didn't know wanted to learn about cooking, but you might listen and catch a thing or two and go from there. And I'm a firm believer that if you're a content creator, you should be watching more non-football stuff than football stuff. And I think this is a great place for me to do that and provide this opportunity to like let you learn about something and maybe catch a little nugget of truth or a little kernel that you can take and kind of noodle on throughout the week and go from there. So
well, that's so cool. And you mentioned those words, Scott Fishbowl.
Yes.
So are you going to be playing this year, and are you going to be participating in the live draft in your area or some other area?
The hope is obviously to get an invite. There is a live draft in Madison. I went to it last year and drafted there. I have gone to the Chicago live draft the past 2 years just to help out. Love Steven Johnson, what he does down there. Just love hanging out with people. Scott Fishbowl for me is just a fun event that builds community. I don't care how I do in it, to be honest with you. Like, the team is secondary to just having the fun, building the community around the drafts, the whole concept of it. So I'm planning... Madison and Chicago are the same day this year. Chicago is also the gala, which aligns with the FSGA conference. I'm still trying to figure out if I can go to the FSGA conference.
Want to go to that? We had that in Boston last year, and it was you want to attend that one, whether you're drafted or not. Yeah.
If I'm going to go to the FSGA conference, then I'll go to the gala and maybe draft there, or maybe I'll just won't do a live draft and I'll just go to the gala anyway. And there's still some pieces in the work. But yes, I plan on playing. This will be my 4th year if I get in. I've been to three live drafts. I think it's just a fun event. I would love to travel one of these years to go to like London or one of those other events, or LA or Vegas. Maybe next year.
Might I even add Houston on that list?
Yeah, I mean,
right. Rick is doing Houston this year.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, there's a ton of great cities I would love to go to. Just
barbecue and beer. What else do you need?
There you go.
And fantasy football friends.
Yep.
And also, speaking of big events that are coming up in August, there's the FF Expo. Do you go to that, and are you planning on this year?
Yes, the plan is to go back this year. I have to just double check. I've been the past 2 years. Previously, before that, it had always fallen on the weekend of my son's birthday, and we always go camping for my son's birthday. Now he's moved it up, so it's always the weekend before. So it's still the plan to go this year. I haven't booked my ticket or anything like that, but I'll work that out. I got the draft next week. I was in Buffalo last weekend for a funeral. I got the draft this week, and then once the draft's over, then
one step at a time. Man.
One next event at a time. But I should be there. I love it. I think it's one of those great events where it's just a lot of fun, meeting people, getting to know people, building friendships, building connections, building relationships. Again, I don't go for to listen to the panels. Maybe I'll be on a panel or two this year. Who knows? But I want to meet people. I want to talk to people. Again, as an extrovert, that's my heyday. Like, it's just all kinds of people. Last year was Saturday, and everybody's just kind of milling around. And I saw this guy sitting in the stands, and I just walked up and sat down and said, "Hey, man, my name's Dustin." He's like, "Hey, my name's Johnny. Johnny Main." I don't know if you guys know him. He does the fantasy football show with Nick Wilcox. I talk to Johnny probably once a week. Like, he texts me, he gives me a call. Like, and it was just me. Saw him sitting there by himself. Whenever sat down, said, "Hey, what's up?" And now we're like really good friends. So it's just one of those things where you never know what's going to happen. I tweeted out today that a lot of people are missing things just because they don't ask. And I think that's something like, if you just talk to people like, "Hey, what's your name?" That's an ask. Worst they can say is, "No, I don't want to talk to you." And you lose nothing. But you never know what might come of those conversations, of who you talk to, who you know, who you meet. I think a lot of people are just missing out because they're just not taking that step to go up to them and saying hi. Or, "Hey, do you guys have room for this?" Or, "Can I come to this? I'm going to this really cool charity event called the Taste of the Draft next week." It's a pretty pricey charity ticket. And I just reached out and said, "Hey, do you have media availability?" And they're like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you go." And I'm like, "Sweet. This will be my 3rd one. I've done 2 other events the previous year's draft." All I did was ask. They could have said no, but they were like, "Yes, we'd love to have you go." So now I get to go to this cool events and report on it because I asked. And I think a lot of people just miss out because they don't take that risk of going, "Hey, what's your name?" Just ask. And someone might say yes. And then you never know what kind of friendship you'll get out of that.
And that's great advice as a rookie attendee. This is my first, and
Me
Joe's.
too. It'll be my first
be out there as well, and his first. So, that's a great reminder that people are generally very friendly and
very friendly,
more than willing to talk with you, and that's the whole point of going out there. So,
and I'll throw it out to you guys and anybody watching. Like, if you are nervous about meeting someone or want to meet someone, come find me. I have no problem tracking them down. I did that last year. I was sitting at table with Tip and Greg Kellogg, and there was 3 fans. There was
Tip
3
was
fans.
Tip was in the chat. Shout out to Tip.
Yep,
He's
Tip. And so they were talking. So Greg's like, "Hey, you guys are fans." So I said, "Hey, who are you guys fans of? Like, who do you listen to?" And they were like, "Oh, we listen to Dynasty Nerds." I was like, "Oh, let me go find Rich." And I looked for him and couldn't find him. And I saw Dr. Kevin. I said, "Hey, if you see Rich from Nerds, send him over here." And 2 minutes later, Kevin goes by with Rich and said, "Rich, come with me." It's like one of the fans had just connected them. And that's my role at the expo is I'm a connector. So if you guys, Rick, if you come up to me and you're like, hey, I want to meet so-and-so, or have you seen, I'll find them. I'll yell across the crowd. I was doing that last year. I was going, hey, Kevin, come here. Hey, Mike. And I was just calling people over and just like, oh, I want to talk to this guy. Let me call him over. Like, don't be shy. Come find me. Anybody can come find me. Yeah. JC knows I was yelling at people. I was like, hey, come here. I got to meet this guy. I was just, that's what feeds me. That's my passion. That's my goal, is just connect people.
Me and Rick are fighting over the button. Sorry. Sorry, Dustin.
I don't care if you talk to me. I want you to talk to who you want to talk to. If you want to talk to someone and maybe you're intimidated, I don't care. I'll go to anybody. I don't care who they are. So that's my goal. I'll introduce you to everyone.
Well, Dustin, I'm going to take you up on that.
You come find me.
Very shy, so I'll.
I tell people, make a list of the people you want to say hi to, or the people you don't know or you want to get to know, and let me know, and I'll do my best to introduce you guys.
So Rick's goal at the expo this year is to be everybody's arm candy. He wants
there you go.
He wants to be shown off to everybody.
Yeah, I've told Wendy that I'm going to be on her elbow the whole time I'm out there. So.
Wendy's great. Have you ever met Wendy in real life?
Not in real life.
I haven't yet. No, I wish. I can't wait. She's at the expo.
Wendy's a darling to hang out with.
Nice.
See, I was just talking about Jono. Like, I just went up and talked to him and was like, hey, man, how's it going?
I met Jono at Scott Fish 13.
Yeah.
He wasn't in. I didn't come across him last year. Last year was like extravagant. We had 6 tables. I was bouncing around. I talked to Sal Leto more than anybody because that guy can talk the air off of Brass Monkey.
Yeah.
But, I hope to see him again this year in Boston. I'm sure he'll be there.
I'm sure he'll be there.
Nice. All right. So let's get into your Buffalo Bills, right? That's your favorite team?
Yes.
All right. Give us a 2025 outlook. And then, Rick, if you have any fantasy football questions for him, the Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, whatever, wide receiver room, running back, anything you got for him after he gives his little outlook, hit him with a question.
I mean, the Bills should go at least 12-5. That's my prediction. I looked at their games. So the home games win against Miami, New England, the Jets, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. Those are wins. That's 5. Away games, they probably beat the Jets, beat Carolina, beat Cleveland, beat Houston, beat Pittsburgh. That's 10 wins. The toss-up games...
Beat Houston?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love how you left New England off that list because that New England's a problem.
Here's my thought. Yeah, they'll go 4-2 in the division. So my toss-up games are away New England, Miami, Atlanta, and then home games KC, Cincy, Baltimore, and then probably lose to Philly. So if I've got 10 wins probably in the bag, they just need to win 2 more of those toss-up games. Even if you throw Houston as a toss-up, you need to win 3 of your there's 6. There's 7 toss-up games. You need to win 3 of the 7. I think you can do that. I think that's reasonable. That puts you at 12-5. They should win the division. I mean, I can't see how they wouldn't. I'm hoping for a Super Bowl. Obviously, I mean, I just want one before I die, and I feel like our window's closing with Josh Allen very quickly. So I'm very nervous about that.
So, and since Joe did tee up the questions about the team, and as someone who's got Ray Davis on a number of teams, will you think he'll get more of workload, or you think they're going to stick with James Cook, or are they drafting a running back?
I wouldn't be surprised if they draft a running back in the 3rd round. The Bills have 2 second-round picks this year. The problem is James Cook is still really good, right? Like, he's still a really good running back, and we can talk about the contract all you want. Like, once play starts, like, they don't care about a contract anymore. Ray Davis had 113 carries. I'm not sure his ceiling is much more than that. I mean, he could probably get to 150 carries. Not like James Cook had a ton. I think James Cook only had, he had 207. So the problem with Ray Davis is going to be touchdowns. He's kind of that, little bowling ball at 5'8", 220. But Josh Allen just takes a lot of those. So his upside is capped for sure.
Yeah. So, and that was the question I was going to follow up with. As a goal line back, but James Cook had just a huge number of touchdowns. And then of course you've got Josh Allen. Yeah. It's a tough spot, or it's a tough landing spot for him, as good as you would think going to a good running team.
So they could draft a pass catching back, which then will take some of the work away from Ray Davis a little bit, maybe a little from James Cook. I don't think they spend high draft capital. I think they have too many other needs. Unless they are content with James Cook leaving after this year and they're like, hey, we're going to spend a high draft capital on a Quinton Judkins or something like that. Give me Travion Henderson all day.
Yeah.
Maybe they trade James Cook. I doubt it. I don't think someone's going to trade for him, worthy draft capital to pay him a contract. So I think Ray Davis is fine. He loses those goal line carries. Same thing with like Saquon does great because he's Saquon, but there is no goal line work in Philly because of Jalen Hurts. The same thing in Buffalo. Like Josh Allen is the goal line back at the end of the day.
And as much as a wide receiver is always thought of as being a need position, are they like Kansas City where they don't need to have that type of wide receiver and that they'll look elsewhere?
They don't need to. I would love it if they had it. I was hoping they'd get T. Higgins or DK Metcalf. They have this like everyone eats mentality. I still believe in Keon Coleman. They wanted him last year. That was their guy they were targeting all offseason. They wanted him in the draft. They knew they could trade back to get him. Khalil Shakir is still good for fantasy purposes there. It's frustrating because no one's going to see a ton of targets. We have a slightly, I'm going to say deep draft class. We have a moderately deep draft class in that third round range where I think you'll see some of these guys. I would love to see him go get a big, tall guy is what I think they really need. Or maybe a more possession guy. I mean, Keon Coleman's great at contested catches. He can be the jump ball guy. I think they need someone who could just, big, who could just, run that post, just turn and catch it, right? I don't think they need someone who's, Keon can be the jump ball guy. Shakir can be the slant guy, get your first downs. They just need a big guy.
They need a stretcher. I think they need
a field stretcher a little bit. They also just need a big body who can just like turn around and catch the ball. And, everybody thought Kincaid was going to be that except for me.
I was just going to say, isn't that Dalton Kincaid?
No, Kincaid's not that good. So yeah. I think they could use someone.
We're finding that out now, unfortunately.
He's just a new Kyle Pitts.
I wasted a first round pick on him in a dynasty rookie draft.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect them to look at one of the tight ends that are coming out.
No, they still have Dawson Knox there who plays a good role, who has he's not good for fantasy, but he's really good on the team. I think after this year, Knox might be done, and then we'll see what happens with Kincaid. I think they might be in a bind like Atlanta is with Pitts, where it's like, we spend a ton of draft capital, he hasn't panned out, what do we do? Again, Buffalo doesn't favor their tight end, so they could go out and get, like Miami, go get a Jonnu Smith type guy next year or the year after and just kind of fill it in for a couple years, and then draft someone in 26, 27. I saw Tip's comment about McDermott. I like McDermott. I think he is risky enough when you need to, but he's not like not Dan Campbell where he's going in for every fourth down. I think a lot of times he lets the offensive coordinator make some questionable play calls. When it's 3rd and 5, like we don't need a 20-yard bomb down the field. Like just get first downs. My son knows when I watch the games, my mantra is smart plays, first downs, not touchdowns. I just want a first down. Like I don't need you to get a touchdown every play. I just need you to get first downs. If you continue to get first downs, eventually you'll get the touchdowns. And I think we've shifted that a little bit last year. So I think McDermott's fine. People want to know if he's on the hot seat. I don't see it. If they miss the playoffs completely and there's no injuries, I could see it, but I think he's fine. I think he'll be there for a while.
So, Dustin, I wanted to ask you because I haven't been in, as far as fantasy football goes, I haven't been in on Shakir. This year, I'm kind of in best ball drafts. I like him in the 8th round. The contract that he got kind of tells me that that's like Josh Allen's trust. That's the guy he trusts. Yep. So, I'm kind of in on him this year. Do you think he takes a step forward and maybe becomes that number one identity Buffalo wide receiver, or is it or are you still on the whole spread it out type of deal?
I think it's still going to be spread it out. Obviously, I expect Keon Coleman to take a step forward. They brought in Josh Palmer, who I think is a better NFL player than a fantasy player. Right. Shakir had 100 targets last year. I could see that getting to 125. I don't think it goes above 135. I just don't see that volume for him. He's got 10 yards per catch. I think that's where he's going to stay. He had 4 touchdowns, so maybe he gets 2 more touchdowns this year. If I was projecting a line for Shakir, it would be 110 targets, probably 80 receptions, 900 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think he'll be solidly in that wide receiver 3 range. So I think for fantasy, you're looking at him at your wide receiver 3 or a flex play every week.
If he's a flex, yeah, that's kind of where
I think he's a flex, right? He's good for 5 to 10 points every week, which for me is the flex range. He's never going to put up a 30-point week. Just
Yeah,
He'd have to score 2 touchdowns.
You're probably right about that. He's
So,
ceiling.
He's probably my second to last flex play because he's consistent. But I'm probably going with 3 wide receivers that probably have higher floors. Let's say I have 3 flex. I'm probably going. The last flex is probably a super boom bust guy. He'll be my second flex, and then my first flex is probably a higher end guy.
This is a good flex if you start with 3 boomers. Like you want Shakir as your flex, but if you don't have 3 aces already in the hole, you maybe not target.
Yeah, if you're counting on Shakir as your wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 3, you're probably lacking somewhere. Would you want to make a trade?
And even just looking at the Bills, Coleman has way more upside than Shakir.
Yep. I mean, they both had 4 touchdowns last year, and that says a lot because Coleman missed a bunch of time. So I mean, Coleman could easily get to 8 touchdowns on 40 receptions or something crazy like that. Like he could have a high touchdown rate, which is unsustainable from year to year. But you can see Coleman get 8 touchdowns and only have literally 30, 40 catches on 70 targets.
Yeah, nice. And that's about where they picked him too. They picked him as that type of wide receiver.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on to Dustin's rookie confidence level, I guess, percentages. Yep. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that process and how you come up with a percentage and the time frame? Is it immediate or is it like over a 2-year window? Give us all the details on it.
Yeah, so it's something I just started doing this year. It's kind of a thought I've had for the past couple of years of I don't like straight rankings, because my 2 and my 3, the gap between 2 and 3 might be bigger than the gap between 3 and 4. If you're going to do that, I prefer tiers, but even tiers are, tiers can be a wide range. And I started thinking about originally in these, like, who do you like better this year? Do you like, Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin? It's like, well, how much more I may pick on a straight pull one side or the other, but I might be slightly more on one side or a lot more on one side. There's no room for that variance. So I started doing this year with rookies and my confidence levels on them. So part of it is based on watching the game film, looking at stats, looking at the analytics, and partly my gut. Obviously, these are pre-draft rankings or pre-draft confidence levels. So that'll change based on landing spot, because I'm a big believer that landing spot plays a huge part in their success or failure.
It's like more than 80%, I think.
I get it, right? Like draft capital matters. Like, right, I'm not going to take someone who's drafted in the 3rd round over someone drafted in the 1st round. But I think if you go, hey, this guy's the 2nd round, this guy's the 3rd round, there's only 20 picks between them. It doesn't make a difference. Landing spot will. So that's where I got with this thing. And it's a work in progress. And this is the first year I'm doing it. So I kind of threw them out there on Twitter and Blue Sky and Reddit of like, hey, this is my confidence levels. For all positions. I didn't do a ton of them, and so when I did them, I literally pulled someone else's ranking list just so I get the player names and confidence. So if you look at them a list, like some guys have higher, they're lower on the list, but it's just because that's just the way they came in. So if you want to pull up the quarterbacks, we can talk about that a little bit. Quarterbacks are different. Quarterbacks for me, I believe they're going to play six games, 6 games over the next 2 years. If you look at almost any quarterback that starts 6 games, they will be a fantasy relevant quarterback in half of those 6 games. Aiden O'Connell, Cooper Rush, they're going to be in that QB 15 and up range at least a couple of times. So they're going to be someone in that streamer category. Obviously, in 2 quarterback leagues, they get more play. Wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, it's more like, hey, in the next 2 years, they're going to be somewhat fantasy relevant. So these are my confidence levels that they're going to be fantasy relevant in terms of they will be someone on your bench that you will consider playing in your flex or possibly in your tight end / quarterback streaming options. So if you look at the quarterbacks, Cam Ward, part of the quarterbacks is baking in, do I think they land on a team that's going to start them? So you'll see that with Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. We have Jackson Dart on the twice. Jackson Dart, and then
oh wow, I'm sorry.
Jalen Milroe.
Jalen Milroe, yeah, sorry.
Do I think they're going to get started? So do I think Quinn Ewers, McCord, Howard, the rest of those guys, are they going to get starting roles? Probably not. Now, I will say this. Someone like a Will Howard, who I think is a very good quarterback, if he gets drafted by the Rams, my confidence level over the next 2 years is going to be higher on him, because I think behind Stafford, on that team that has Puka and probably another wide receiver, Kyron Williams, and a good coach that can get a lot out of his quarterback, he's going to get some playing time over the next 2 years. So my confidence might go up. Whereas someone Jackson Dart, if Jackson Dart goes to Seattle or the Raiders and he's behind, Geno Smith at the Raiders for 2 years, my confidence level is going to drop because I don't know how much time he's actually going to get to play and the team he's on. Yes, they have Brock Bowers, but what else do they have? And so that's where it plays into. So landing spot's going to matter. So I have Cam Ward at 65% as my highest quarterback just based on what I saw in film, what I saw from the stats and the analytics. And I look at it this way. These players on an average NFL team, what do they do on an average NFL team? So Cam Ward on an average team, whatever you think the average team in the NFL is. Now, Cam Ward could go to a good landing spot. He could go to a bad landing spot, which will change the confidence level.
So, how you feel about Tennessee? Because I have a feeling that's where he goes.
That's where he's going to go. That's why I think he's at 65%. Because when I did these, I did these on the 5th of April. It was kind of, all the tea leaves were pointing to Tennessee. I don't have a ton of confidence in that. So I think if he was going to Pittsburgh, I'd have a higher confidence level. If I
I agree.
If Pittsburgh had the 1-on-1 and like, hey, we're taking Cam Ward, like, okay, let me get a little more confidence because I trust that system. Obviously, you got DK, Pickens, Pat Freiermuth are way better than anything Tennessee has. There's teams that just can't develop quarterbacks. Jets can't develop. Browns can't get a quarterback to save their lives, right? There's just teams. I think Carolina's kind of in the same boat on some level. There's just not a lot of confidence that I have in that team and that coaching staff. Obviously, things change year to year. So quarterbacks are a little bit, it's a crapshoot. Landing spot will obviously change these for these guys.
Yeah, and I apologize since I screwed up on the slide.
So who's 3? Is Milroe 3 or is
Milroe would be 3? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that seems to make sense to me because while he isn't known for his throwing and would be a project, his running is so far differentiated that he's probably of the top 5, the one that might have the best chance to be, that kind of a difference maker, a Fields-like player.
Yeah, and right, it all depends on where Milroe goes. It seems like him or Jackson Dart are probably going to Pittsburgh at this point. So are they a starter week 1? Does someone go to Cleveland? Are they the starter week 1? Because Deshaun Watson is still there and getting paid a ton of money.
The Saints could be.
The Saints, right? Like, so in my mock draft, I have, I see Cam Ward to Tennessee. I have Shedeur to the Saints. I have Milroe to Pittsburgh. And then I have Jackson Dart falling out and probably going to Cleveland's. Actually, not Cleveland because I didn't do a second round because I had Cleveland trading up. I have Jackson Dart probably going to the Rams in like the second round.
And then the lower half.
That's not a long term. That's not a bet. Sorry, Rick.
Not a bad deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And the lower half of the, any of those quarterbacks could hit or might not based on where they land. And so you could almost change them off.
Is there any that you have any aspirations for at that far down the list?
I love Will Howard. I think what he's done in college, I think if he got his opportunity, would do really well. Part of the, with QBs, you kind of bake in who's going to start, who's not. But let's say Pittsburgh shocks the world and takes Will Howard in the 3rd round and he's their starter. I'm all for it, right? Let's say, there's a chance that Pete Carroll with the Raiders takes a Will Howard, a Quinn Ewers in the 4th round. And they start him week 1. Like, it's not out of the question. It happened in Seattle. Right? Like, they paid Matt Flynn a ton of money off of 2 games with Pittsburgh. They drafted Russell Wilson in like the 5th round and he started week 1. So it's not like they're beholden to contracts. So if that happens, my confidence will change. But until we see it, I'm banking that those guys aren't going to get a spot. I think Will Howard, if given an opportunity, if Will Howard got drafted by Pittsburgh, he would be a good quarterback and would be a serviceable fantasy quarterback for you.
Awesome.
Nice.
And then we can go, if I can figure out how to switch to the next slide.
Let's get into that big position, the big 2025.
The running backs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe Travion Henderson should be considered with Ashton Genty as the 1A, 1B of this class.
I agree. I'm in on this. I love it.
Last year, we were talking about Henderson being the best back in that draft class. We were talking about him being Bijan level good, and then he went back to college. And then all of a sudden, he's 4th, 5th on some guys. People are, Caleb Johnson over him. He should be up there. So I have him just as much confidence in him as I do Ashton Genty. Omarion Hampton's going to be the weird one. Like, I think he's very landing spot dependent. Same thing with Quinshon Judkins. Like Judkins to me is not a bell cow back. He's a pass catching back.
He's a role player. Yep.
So if he goes to a team, if he goes to the Patriots who need a pass catching back, I'm all for it. But if he goes to a team that wants him to be a bell cow, I might drop my confidence in that a little bit. Or he goes to a team with a bad offensive line. That's where I think a lot of people don't realize is offensive line moves matter, and we don't talk about them for fantasy because they don't score fantasy points. Coaching changes matter. All those things matter. Those are NFL moves that play into it. Or they go to a team that just doesn't run the ball a ton. If you go to, let's take Buffalo. They don't run the ball a ton. They throw it a ton. So my confidence in James Cook this year is going to be lower than what his ADP is because I don't have confidence that he's going to be able to repeat what he did because they just don't throw. They throw the ball way more. So with these rookies, I'm going, what's the confidence? I think they're good. They have roles, but it'll depend on team. So when you start looking down the list, if you're looking at Caleb Johnson, Cam Scatterbo, Dylan Sampson, I think they're talented players. They're role players. They are very much Tank Bigsby-like to me, where they need to go to a team that's going to split the work between them and a complementary player like a Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. I think that's where I'm at with those guys.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you have Harvey with higher confidence because he is super talented, and compared to the other guys around him, I think a lot of people were excited about Caleb Johnson because he had that one real big year, but then he wasn't going up against the same defenses that some of the other like the SEC backs were, or the the Ohio State backs were. So I actually love your ranking based on confidence.
And I think a lot of this will change.
Yeah,
obviously once we get draft spots and draft landing spots, right? You look at last year, everyone was Jonathan Brooks, even with the injuries, Trey Benson. Trey Benson ends up going to Arizona. Everybody's going, James Conner is toast. And all of a sudden, Trey Benson's toast.
And Conner stayed healthy all year, right?
Yeah, right. And then I think a lot of people were down on Bucky Irvin. But I loved Bucky Irvin last year because I knew that Rashad White was an inefficient runner that they wanted to basically replace. That's where I think you can definitely find some value in knowing systems and knowing who is going to get replaced. And that's why I think this confidence level, because most people will have Genty as tier 1, Hampton, Henderson, Judkins in tier 2, maybe Caleb Johnson in there, but there's slight differences on how I like them. Then tier 3, it's Tootin, it's Caleb Johnson, it's Scatterbo, it's Harvey, it's Sampson, it's all these other guys. But I think there's going to be some variation. And once we get draft capital and draft spot, that'll really make a difference. And you'll see these. I think there'll be a lot of haves and have-nots when I'm done with this after the draft.
So there's one name I don't see on there I want to ask you about. DJ Giddens. Any thoughts on him?
So here, I didn't do a ton of scouting this year. Just hadn't had time. And Giddens to me is good. He's consistent. He had consistent touchdown production in college. He had consistent carry work. He's a good size at 6'1", 200 pounds. I just wonder if he's going to me, he's like an A.J. Dillon where it's just like going to be, I think he's going to get stuck behind a guy and never get an opportunity. And he'll be rotated in. There's certain guys where you have your Gibbs and your David Montgomery where you have two different skill sets and they're both standalone fine. Then you have guys like what we saw with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones for so long in Green Bay. It's where it's like they have the same skill set. And it's just like you come in for a breather and you never get the opportunity to kind of get that momentum going unless there's an injury. So I think DJ Giddens will be in that spot where he'll probably go behind someone and just never get an opportunity. But if he does, I think he can be really good. It's just a matter of what that looks like, right? If he goes behind, he's one of those guys I could see someone like Tampa Bay taking because they just don't like Rashad White. Or he goes to Houston and just lingers behind Joe Mixon, who seems ageless at this point and never gets a shot, right? Like Joe Mixon can play for another 3 years and all of a sudden Joe Mixon, retires and Giddens is like, I've been here for 3 years. I'm looking for a new contract.
Yeah.
Rashad
because Pierce is behind Mixon, so it's he's now all of a sudden RB3. So
yep. So let's take us to the wide receivers, Rick.
Now, wide receivers. I'll say I pulled this list off of someone like I just pulled an ADP list. Travis Hunter wasn't on the list, and that was an omission by me. I have Travis Hunter at 85% confidence level.
Okay, gotcha.
There's certain guys on here that I feel more confident in them being fantasy relevant, but not necessarily being superstars. Jack Beck is one of those guys at 55%. I think he can be good. I think he can be a solid player and a solid flex play for your fantasy. I have him at 55%. I'm worried about landing spot, but I think he can be at the right spot, a Julian Edelman type guy where you're like, or a Jacoby Myers, one of those slot merchants where it's like a Khalil Shakir, right? He could be the next Khalil Shakir. He could be a guy who gets 80 to 100 targets, catches 70, 70 of them, gets you 500, 600, 700 yards, a couple touchdowns, and he's a flex play for you.
And I don't think Beck, big slot player as opposed to, skinny guy. Yeah.
I don't think Beck is going to be the next Amon-Ra St. Brown.
No.
But like in terms of fantasy, he's going to be. So I might have more confidence in him, but he might have a lower ceiling than someone like a Matthew Golden or an Emeka Buka, who I really, really like. I have Emeka Buka at 85%, same as Travis Hunter.
I like a Buka myself. He's probably up right
he's
at the
up
top.
There. Trey Harris is someone I really, really like. Xavier Restrepo ran really slow at the 40, but I still think his route running ability and what he can do on the field, the 40 doesn't matter, and he can still be really good in the right system that uses him. Like, he's not going to be a burner, obviously. He's not going to be a field stretcher. So if you're putting him in that role, he's not going to succeed, but he might be a decent player. Someone like Matthew Golden, who I'm a little lower on because he's basically that field stretcher. Those are boom bust guys. For fantasy, I don't love them. I'm not a risky boom bust guy in fantasy. So I worry about my confidence level is low on Matthew Golden because I'm not sure he can be a consistent week in, week out player that you're like, yeah, he's a consistent fantasy player that I want. He might just be MVS, who you don't want on your fantasy team. You maybe want him on your best ball team, but you probably don't want him on your managed team because you just never know when those weeks are going to hit.
Right.
Yeah. His top side might be JMO and his downside might be MVS. And then you wasted I mean, I've even seen the Dallas Cowboys, lined up to, be a landing spot for him. And, that's a great spot to go to, but is he, that complete of a wide receiver?
Yeah. And they're talking about, so I've seen the Cowboys take him in the first round. I'm going, that's not what I want.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing and of course,
third round. Sure. I'd love it in the third round, but I don't think I want to spend high draft capital on him and then just go, he's a burner, and hopefully he breaks out. So,
and then tight end, and it's pretty top heavy, but why don't you go ahead and go through your list?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Colston Loveland. I think he is the better. I think he's the more complete receiver than Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren is the better tight end, if that makes sense. Like, I think Tyler Warren does more tight endy things than Colston Loveland. Obviously, my confidence level is high on both them. Harold Fanning, same way. Like, Harold Fanning as an athlete and a receiver is really good. I just wonder about his tight end ability, but I don't care about that for fantasy. I don't need you to go out and block for fantasy. I need you to catch passes. So I'm worried that Tyler Warren goes to a team where he has to do a little more blocking and doesn't get the heavy target volume. He's not going to play a ton of, I don't know if he's going to play as many slot snaps, run as many routes as Loveland and Fanning. So that's why I'm a little higher on them. Again, tight end for me is super landing spot dependent.
Yep.
I have a typo there. So folks, he didn't go to Penn State.
Yeah. People love Dalton Kincaid because of draft capital, but the landing spot sucked for him. 2 years ago, we were talking about Michael Mayer as the best tight end in that draft class coming into the draft after the combine. He goes to the Raiders.
And now he's an afterthought.
Now he's an afterthought because they brought Powers.
Yeah.
You look at the Packers. They draft Luke Musgrave, whoever was like top 3 tight end in that draft class. It was him, Kincaid, and Myers. And then all of a sudden they get Tucker Kraft, who was like 4 or 5, and now Tucker Kraft's a star, and Musgrave's basically an afterthought. So landing spot will really matter. There are teams that just don't focus on the tight end, and that's really hard. I mean, for the longest time, Cincinnati never focused on the tight end. They've changed the past year, but for the longest time, they never focused on the tight end. Same thing with Miami. They never focused on tight end until last year. So changes in offense mean there's going to be teams that just don't. Seattle never threw to the tight end. You could throw any guy. You could throw Noah Fant in there. You could throw anybody they want. They just never threw the tight end. So I don't care how gifted of a player you are. If you're in a team that doesn't throw the tight end, it doesn't matter.
And so one of the early draft or team targets for tight end, and it's one I'm worried about, is Indianapolis Colts. So thoughts on either the Colts or maybe the Jets drafting a Warren or a Loveland?
I could see the Jets more than the Colts. I get the Colts need a tight end, but they did just re-sign Mo Alley Cox. Again, they're a team that just doesn't focus on the tight end. So I don't want my tight ends going there. It's just not a spot
No,
that they just
I feel like when they do use the tight ends, it's like a two tight, like it's 12 personnel.
Yeah. Right. And you have wide receivers that are disappointing because they can't get the ball done. We don't even know who's starting there. Like Daniel Jones could be the week 1 starter, which doesn't impress me. At least with the Jets, with Justin Fields, who made Pat Freiermuth a household, fantasy household name, I'm okay with that. I mean, obviously, if you're a tight end, if you are a believer in Loveland or Warren, you want them to go to Denver or the Rams or the Chargers. Like, that's where you want them to go. The Jets isn't bad. That's where you want them to go. You would love it if they, maybe Miami, if they decide to, surprise cut Jonnu Smith or something. You want a team that's going to focus on the tight end. You don't want these guys in these bad systems like the Colts.
Yeah, and I know that the Texans are going to be looking at tight end. That's a position of need. Maybe later in the draft, and maybe a Mason Taylor. Or Elijah Arroyo might be a good fit.
Yeah, and you can, if I would take a Texans tight end over a Colts tight end. Because you're right, the Texans, they've made Dalton Schultz a good fantasy asset, right? So you get someone there who's a fantasy asset. I mean, you could look at the Giants might need a tight end. They've done pretty well. I mean, I think they like some of their guys coming out, but there's just teams out there that I just don't want. I mean, I was really big on Sam Laporta 2 years ago because I knew the Lions were a team that focused on tight end. They'd had TJ Hawkinson and they traded TJ Hawkinson and because they traded away TJ and they weren't good. If you look at the guys that were left, it was like Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra. Those guys had just as many touchdowns combined as Hawkinson did the first half of the year. That was just a system that favors the tight end. So if there's a team like that, like a Denver, like a Rams, like a Chargers, that's where I want my tight ends to go.
And even the Patriots, wouldn't you? I mean, they've got Hunter Henry.
They just signed Austin Hooper, so I'm a big Austin Hooper believer. He's got chemistry with May. I will say this as a Patriots guy. Drake, I've been mixing in Austin Hooper in round 20 of best balls just because if we know Hunter Henry can miss time. If Hunter Henry misses time, and Austin Hooper has a path to being a top 2 target in New England, is as of now. I don't know what they do in the draft.
We'll see what they do with the draft
if they make any trades, but he currently has a path to being a contingent path to being a top 2 wide receiver, top 2 pass catcher in New England, and he's a tight end.
Yeah, we could easily see like a Harold Fanning be the 3rd tight end off the draft board, but be the number 1 tight end for fantasy in terms of rookies, just because he goes to a better spot. You could see Elijah Arroyo be drafted in the 4th rounds and go to the Rams, and all of a sudden he becomes a streamable tight end for fantasy. And he outproduces Loveland and Warren if they go to bad spots.
Yeah, I know at the combine, Roy was probably the name that came up the most among people that were watching. And so,
combine, Senior Bowl, I mean, it's just he's not a bad athlete. I think my confidence level with him is just there was a lot of inconsistency in production, and where do I think he's going to go? There's just not a ton of landing spots for tight ends out there. There's 3 or 4, and I think he's the 5th man out of there's 4 spots that I like, and he's the 5th man out. I think. Got
it. And I like Taylor. I mean. I think he's going to be able to play both as a blocking tight end as a receiving tight end, so he's a good spot.
All right. So, do you play Dynasty at all, Dustin?
Yes, I'm a Dynasty. That is my bread and butter.
All right. So let me. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here.
Right.
Give us 2 buy low options right now.
Buy low. I talked about him earlier, but James Conner for me is a buy low. I think he's one of those guys that, he's a vet. People kind of forget about him, but I think he's just a solid player that I think you can get low. And then I am buying up Kendre Miller everywhere I can. The Saints are just a trash heap of players right now.
Train wreck.
Kamara's still there, but they need to figure something out. I think we could see Kendre Miller. It's a new coaching staff that actually likes him and doesn't hate him the old guy used to, like Dennis Allen used to. So I think Kendre Miller, if he's healthy, I think he's a guy I'm buying low, stashing on my team. Same with James Conner.
That's the biggest condition is Kendre Miller going to be healthy. Yeah.
Those are 2. Those are like actual buy lows. Those are under the radar ones. Good ones. Yep. Good choices.
One thing, and I saw your article where you were talking about draft spots. The best draft spots. But, one of the things I guess people are worried about, because this is a running back deeper draft, is the impact that's going to have on, the current running back in some of these spots. So are there any veterans that you're expecting to be in danger?
I don't know if they're necessarily in danger. And I'm not worried about Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley is still Saquon Barkley. But Saquon Barkley has an injury history, had a ton of carries last year, right? Like he think he had 300 and some carries, 345 carries.
He had over 370 touches. So
yeah, and if you Greg Kellogg from from Sports Affiliation talks about that curse of that carry load.
I know. He really presses it too. I'm not worried. I feel like, I don't know, I would just draft properly if you get Saquon, but
yes,
but still, do not fade Saquon.
No, I'm not saying fade Saquon.
Yeah. But no, I don't know, but Greg is. Yeah.
I mean, I have Saquon, this year is I think running back 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I just worry that they could go, that the Eagles and their analytics and their department will go, hey, we gave this guy 370 touches. We need to mix it up a little bit. And maybe they bring in someone a little earlier than people expect. Maybe they bring in, an Ollie Gordon or someone like that who is a good player who can just kind of spell it. And maybe they draft someone in the 3rd round. They have the luxury of doing that because they don't have a ton of holes. I mean, they just won the Super Bowl with a great team and they retained a lot of that. So they could easily draft a running back who could hurt Barkley just enough where Barkley's still going to be a top 5 running back. But if Barkley drops to, let's say he drops to under 300 carries, he probably goes, obviously, I think there's some regression coming anyway there. So let's say he goes to 300 carries, 1,300 yards, and gets 10 touchdowns. He goes from 355 fantasy points to 280, 285. I mean, you're talking 3-4 points a week, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you're right, you're going to have that variance. So he might have weeks where he just is banged up, and then they're going to say, hey, you're banged up, you're not 100%, we don't need you, we have another guy to spell you a little more, because they didn't have that last year. Gainwell wasn't that great. Will Shipley did nothing. I think if the Eagles bring in a guy that could really hurt some of the impact that Barkley has, I'm not fading him. I'm still think he's up there as a top 5 guy, top 4 guy, maybe top 3 running back. I'm probably not going to draft him because I agree with Greg that I think there's a lot of risk there with that many carries. I think we see Barkley finish in the running back 5, running back 6 range. I think we see him finish with, and here's the thing, I'll say this, I think Barkley finishes with 285 points. I don't know where that gets him in the yearly finish. He had 355 points last year, so he's going to drop.
What's that points per? How bad does that hurt his points per game? By 4?
Yeah, I think it's like 4 points. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to fade Barkley, but who are some of your fades that you are going to avoid?
Jerome Ford. I think that's someone I'm definitely going to avoid this year. I think Cleveland is ripe to take a running back early. I actually, in my mock draft I did last night, which I haven't released here, just I do a couple before I release my final one. I think they draft a running back. I have them trading up back into the 1st round to get a running back to get Hampton. So I think they could say that, they have an early 2nd round pick. They could make that trade up and, give up minimal draft capital to move up 5 spots and draft, the 3rd or 4th guy off the board, 3rd or 4th running back off the board at the end of the 1st round. They did it last year. They, ran Nick Chubb till he got hurt, didn't run forward a lot. He's one of the guys I'm fading. And then Aaron Jones, the running back. They brought in Jordan Mason. They've talked up Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones is one of those just kind of plodding, guys who's out there and just kind of is what he is. I'm fading him a little bit on that team with J.J. McCarthy, who I think is a better passer than Sam Darnold ever was. Aaron Jones, 255 carries last year. I think he goes back down to, under 225. So he drops a ton of volume.
Jordan Mason.
Yeah, if you look at 2002, he had 213 carries, 1,100 yards, 2 touchdowns in 17 games. Last year, he had 255 carries, 1,100 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So I think his touchdowns come down. I think his yardage comes down. I think his workload comes down. So I think Jordan Mason, I think just with a better passer, J.D. McCarthy has a little bit of running ability. He's not mobile, but he's he can get out there and get on the edge a little bit. So I'm worried about Aaron Jones. So I'm fading him a little bit this year.
Yeah, and Mason's way better than Ty Chandler. So, there's
way better.
More of a chance that Aaron Jones is not going to see anywhere near as much work. Yeah.
Plus, he's 30 years old and he's had some injury history. Even if it's just 2-3 games, that's a good chunk.
I think there's a chance he could be big down the stretch if they keep him fresh and they get down the stretch and they use him properly, like a gadget running back, and use him as a pass catcher and the way Green Bay used to use him when he thrived in like playoff atmosphere. He does have a little bit of a ceiling, so I'm not completely fading him, but I do totally get what you're saying because Jordan Mason is a pretty good running back. So, and they definitely they didn't sign him just all willy nilly just to sign him. So, or trade or whatever, however they acquired.
They're gonna want to see what they have in JD McCarthy. I think you're gonna want to, I think that team was built to air the ball out. And yes, Aaron Jones can catch the ball, but Sam Darnold threw the ball 545 times. Only had 361 completions. I think J.D. McCarthy, if he has those numbers, he throws the ball 545. He's going to have probably 400 completions. J.D. McCarthy is just a better quarterback than Sam Darnold ever was. His rushing upside, I think, will just take a little bit away from Aaron Jones. And I think if he takes a little bit away, Jordan Mason takes a little bit away, there's a little less volume overall for the running game there.
The consistency goes away, yeah.
Yep, and just that it just enough to erode away a little bit of that value. So I'm not drafting them. I'm just going to, maybe have a round or two lower ADP value on him than what currently ADP is.
All right. So give us a guy that you're definitely leaving every draft with, a must-have, one of your must-have guys.
I'm a Jahmyr Gibbs believer. I think Jahmyr Gibbs he's my running back one.
Nice. Okay. I don't hate it. I have no argument. No argument from me.
I think he's just as good as Barkley. I think he's just as good as Derrick Henry, and you can get him so much later. You can get him, half a round later than those guys. So I'm probably not leaving the first round without Jahmyr Gibbs. For me, and I talked about this with Scott Fishbowl last year, I'm looking for guys that have in the first 2 rounds. I'm looking for guys that can be the number one at their position. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the few guys at running back that can be the number one in his position. You're talking again, Bijan, Barkley, Henry. Yep. Gibbs are like the 4 guys.
His floor is amazing. I had him last year. I had him last year. 18. He's still 18.9 points per game with Montgomery in the lineup. So, and
then Bucky Irving late. I really like what he did last year. 207 carries, 52 targets. He's someone I'm going getting. And then Najee Harris. I've been a believer in Najee Harris. I was pounding the table last year for people in Dynasty to go get Najee Harris. 1,000 yards every season. He's good for 5, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns every year. It goes with the Chargers, who are just going to run the ball. They signed him. They wanted him. Jim Harbaugh's just going to run the ball with them. I'm not leaving without Najee Harris. So if I can get my backfield to be Gibbs, I don't know where Najee's going in drafts, and Bucky Irvin, they're probably going, I probably have to go 1, 3, and 4. I'm okay with that. I'll fill up the wide receivers later on.
Nice.
I like it. I like the Najee too. I think Najee's going like 5'6" range. So he's great. Yeah, I would. As you're running back too with Gibbs, hell yeah. All right. So, and one more question. Caleb Williams, year 2 Caleb Williams with a new head coach and Ben Johnson and beefed up offensive line. How are we feeling? Any optimism here?
I think Caleb Williams, my opinion on Caleb Williams has always been the same. I think Caleb Williams is good, not great. I think he will always be, he's very much just like Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, man, he has all this potential and it just never materializes on the field. I think he'll be in that QB 14 to 18 range. He was QB 16 last year. He threw the ball 562 times, had 20 touchdowns. I think he gets to I don't know if he ever goes above 30 touchdowns ever in his career in a season. That's where I'm at with Caleb Williams. And without that, you just can't get to the top 10 level. I think Caleb Williams will be fine. Obviously, they beat Jen Johnson's going to do a lot more with them. If the Bears go out and get Ashton Genty, I'm worried for him I'm worried for Caleb for fantasy just because it's going to be a run heavy team. I don't love that for Caleb, but I think Caleb's is fine. I was always believing that Caleb's is good, not great, and we hyped him up too much. I worry that he's just for fantasy is never going to be a top 10 guy.
So that kills DJ Moore, Roma Dunze shares, right? As
Yeah,
well.
I've never been a believer in DJ Moore. Like DJ Moore is just one of those like, okay, guys, like he's fine. Roma Dunze's good. Again, what is Roma Dunze's ceiling? Is it Amon-Ra St. Brown? No, it's probably DJ Moore. Like that's his ceiling. It's, I'm going to get out there and get, 5-6 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, 90 receptions. I'll be in that, wide receiver, 15 range. I look at DJ Moore and Roma Dunze in the same light that I look at like Michael Pittman and Terry McLaurin. And those guys you're like, you don't love them as your wide receiver 1 for fantasy. You love them as your wide receiver 2. But a lot of times you get stuck with them as your wide receiver 1. You're like, oh, they're good, but they're right on that cusp. And you're just like, I don't love it because they just don't have the upside.
Right. All right. So I think that's it. That covers the whole show. The show sheet is done, man. We got it done. Good. This was fun, Dustin.
This was a lot of fun.
Pleasure to have you on. I'm glad we met, and we got to know a little bit more about you and talk some football. This was great.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I can't wait to meet you guys at the Expo this year. I'm excited for the draft. I'll be out in Green Bay next week. I'll go up on Wednesday. I got a busy day talking to the prospects and doing some events. Thursday's the draft, Friday draft, and then I'll come home Friday night and watch Saturday at the house. This year's draft seems very more chaos than I think we have seen in other years. I think in other years we've seen the top 10 picks were like pretty locked in. This year it's like the top 3, and then it's like who knows? Like who knows what's going to happen? Even after you might go 5, and you go, okay, then what? And then I don't think anybody knows. Where I think other years we were going, okay, it's this. Here's the top 10. I don't think we see a ton of trades this year. I have 3 in my mock draft. I think we're going to see probably three or maybe 4. So this year's draft could be just absolute mayhem. We could just end up seeing some big blockbuster trades. We could see Tyreek Hill get traded. We could see James Cook get traded. Who knows? I think we don't, but there's a lot of uncertainty for this year's draft, which makes it a ton of fun.
And I think the lack of quarterback in this draft is probably also making it more, I don't know, you've got, once you've got past Ashton Genty and, maybe Henderson and Hampton, after that, it's just a wild west.
And it's the first year that every team has had their first round pick, which has never happened before. So I think teams realizing the value, not only in the first round pick, but like just because of what that represents in the contract and the 5th-year option and what that means. I think there's teams that just go, okay, we're going to hold, and we're going to draft. Because realistically, for me, there's the top tier, which I think there's, the top 10, 12 players. And then players like, 12 through 50 or 60 are all kind of in a group together. I think every year it's been, hey, here's our top 30, here's our top 20 guys, and we have like 21 through 40 are all the same. This year we have this wide group of like this tier 2 guys. And so everybody's going, well, why would I trade? Or I'll try to trade back. But if everyone wants to trade back and no one wants to trade up, there's never going to be trades.
And I was going to say, oh, darn, the Texans don't have the Browns pick anymore. So they get to draft this year.
They do get to draft this year.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
Hey, you guys had a real good draft with Will Anderson and CJ Stroud. So
nice.
Can't go wrong there.
All right, Dustin, tell the folks where they can find your work, you and your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the DUnit13. That's the best place to find me. You can find all my written content at the Fantasy Advice Network. So it's fantasyadvicenetwork.com, I believe. But Twitter is the best place to find me. My podcast, Bridge the Gap, is every Tuesday night, or most Tuesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, live. If there's a topic you guys want to hear, shoot me a message. My Twitter is always open. I'm here to help people, whatever that means. If that means helping you win, helping you make trades, helping you make connections, helping you with life, I'm here to help. So that's my goal, is to help you do whatever you need. If you need, if you're doing something cool, have a cool charity thing or something you're excited about, you want to help extend the reach, let me know. I'll retweet it for you, connect you with people however I can. That's my job, is to be a help to the community out there.
Awesome. There you go, Rick. You got another charity connection.
Yeah.
Dustin will definitely get you a couple of guests maybe. So Rick does the give back show.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great show. So absolutely. All right. Next Thursday, join us next Thursday, same time, 7 p.m., just before the draft. We have one of my very good friends in the space, JD, formerly of Goat District. He's now the draft room baller. I don't know if you guys have seen him out there, but he's like a mentor to me when it comes to podcasting. He's really helped me, given me a lot of good advice. When I first started listening to fantasy football podcasts, it was basically him and like I didn't really mix in any more until like I joined Twitter in 2022. So he means a lot to me. I can't wait to have him on and share him with the audience. Great guy, good friend, very good fantasy football person, and can't wait for it. So, and Rick, why don't you tell us about the rest of the stuff going on? Who you got next week?
Sure. Well, first off, the Sports Affiliation has great shows throughout the week. This weekend, we're getting into the NBA playoffs, and JR is going to be doing his hoops show. And I understand he's also going to be doing a Saturday morning show. So 2 days of NBA talk as we get into the NBA playoffs. And then on Monday and Fridays, Joe and JC do draft related shows.
Draft is after dark. Yeah.
And then on Tuesdays, and Joe mentioned it, the Give Back show where we highlight some of the people who are doing a lot of good in the industry, both with charity leagues and charity events. So that's on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, Carla does a great interview show that she's always getting great guests on her show. So keep an eye out on that. And then Thursday night, back here again. And Joe's already mentioned who's going to be our guests. So again, thanks, Dustin.
We're also rolling right into a live NFL draft
nice
kind of stream party, however you want to call it. It's going to be JC, me, and JD to start, I believe, right after the show. We're rolling right into it. And I think Rick as well. And then we're hoping to get more guests. We're going to try to get more guests on. So as many as we can, even if it's for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Anybody that wants to pop on, let us know. Shoot us a DM.
Maybe I'll pop. Maybe shoot me a DM, and I'll pop on while I'm at the draft.
Awesome. Absolutely. Love it.
Awesome. So with that, thanks everyone for being on the show. Dustin, thanks for being a guest. And why don't we go ahead and tail us out of here, Joe?
Absolutely. Appreciate the chat and everybody that joined us, and thank you, Dustin, once again.
Thanks,
good night, everybody.